My name is David Buseck, and I'm here to talk to you today to give you some information about the time that I've been volunteering with Child Advocates of Silicon Valley and some of the things that I get from it and what I'm able to give. I wanted to start by a little visual to give you a picture of the reasons that Child Advocates is such an important organization. If you look at the map, you'll see that I've got a bunch of dots, and each of those dots is a place where a kid who I've been a mentor for has lived. The light blue dots, in the 6-month time, you'll see that there are a handful of places that this child lived in a short period of time. The green dots was the second child I was with, and I'll talk a little more about each of these in a bit. Also lived in places ranging from the South Bay to the North Bay. And then the next one, the red dots, you'll see over 5 years lived in about 6 or 7 different places. And then the dark blue, there are dots all over the map because this child moved around so much in the course of the 4.5 years that I was with him. That's an indication of the kind of instability that foster kids have and the kind of stability that we're able to bring to them. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is David Buseck. I've been a volunteer since 1998, most of that time as an advocate, and the last year I've been a supervisor coordinating 5 other advocates. I've been married since 1989 and have no kids. I've always loved kids, and this has been a great opportunity for me to spend time with kids in a really positive way that's great for me and also, I believe, great for them. I work at Varian Medical Systems. It's a technology company. We make radiation oncology equipment, and I travel some for work. I did a lot of travel over the years at other companies as well, and just have managed to make this volunteering part of my professional life as well as part of my personal life. When I signed up for Child Advocates, I was working at a company called Applied Materials, and I was reviewing grant requests from different organizations who were asking for money from Applied. It was something I'd been doing for several years, so I'd been in a lot of these meetings and reviewed a lot of proposals from a lot of organizations. But when I read a proposal from Child Advocates, I found it so moving and so powerful, I started choking up in this meeting and thought, wow, if I'm sitting here with a bunch of my technical colleagues and feeling this emotionally engaged by this organization, this is something I need to check into more. So I talked it over with my wife, and I talked it over in my head and decided to go to an orientation session. I liked what I learned, and I signed up and started taking the training classes back in 1998. So I've been doing this now for quite a long time. I have been a mentor for 4 different children, and I did that nonstop until one year I took a break to get my arms around a new job. I did come back to it after the year. What I realized was it was shortly after the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 in January. I had been trying to decide, do I want to come back or not? And I kept saying, no, I'm not ready yet. No, I'm not ready yet. But after that earthquake, I thought, I want to do something. I want to do something to help. And I can't really do anything to people in Haiti, but I can sign back up and take another kid. I can help here locally. So that's when I signed back up again, and then took another child there and did that for another 4 years before I moved over to become a supervisor. So now I am supervising 5 advocates and helping to coordinate their activities with their 5 children. So let me tell you a little bit about the kids who I've been with. I can't identify them by their real names because of the confidentiality in the program. But the first one I'll call Johnny. Was a 6-year-old at the time I met him. He's Caucasian and Latino. Nobody was really sure exactly his background because his dad was unknown. I was with him for about 6 months and really enjoyed him. I also spent a lot of time with his older brother, who was about 9 or 10 at the time. And then they moved out of the area with a family member, so that was the end of that case. The next person that I picked up was a 12-year-old. He was an African-American kid who I'll call Isaac. I was with him for 5 years. He was in the same foster home for most of that time, which is really remarkable and quite unusual. He did have one chance to move to a potential adoptive home, and moved out of the county. So I kept visiting him there for a while. But then he moved back because that foster adopt home just didn't work out, unfortunately. But it was a really critical time because when he moved into a different county, all of the other adults in his life changed. His social worker, his teachers, his parents, his guardians. And I was the one consistent point throughout all of that. And that's one of the really key things that we bring to this as advocates, is consistency. The next kid who I was with was 13 when I met him. He's a Caucasian kid named Noah. I was with him for 5 years. Very intense personal relationship with him. We did all sorts of things together. I learned so much from him, and I think he learned a lot from me. He aged out of the system when he turned 18. Now there's a law called AB 12 that allows kids to remain in care after 18 if they opt to. That didn't exist back then. So when he hit 18, he was out of the system, and that was the end of my formal relationship with him. I've been in and out of contact with him over the years, and yesterday actually was his birthday, so I'm excited about that and sent him birthday greetings, and I hope he got them. The last kid who I was with was 14 when I met him. I call him Caleb. He's a Latino kid. I was with him for about 4.5 to 5 years. He also turned 18 and became a non-minor dependent, so he was able to take advantage of the AB 12 law. But unfortunately, he got in trouble with the law and was arrested and put in jail and was no longer eligible for AB 12. So I'm still in contact with him and hoping that he will be doing well in the near future. I mentioned the races of each of these kids because it's important to recognize that the kids who are in foster care come from all sorts of different backgrounds and in just a lot of different variety. Some of the things that we like to do together is really based on both the kids' interest as well as my interest. So there are times when I'll try to introduce them to things that they may not learn about otherwise, but I definitely try to support the kids' interests as well. Some easy things that we do are go to parks. For younger kids, it's playing on the swings, sliding down the slide, play structures, all of that. For older kids, it's ball games or going for runs or other things like that. One of the things that I do is just driving around. For some kids, that's the time that they talk the most, is just sitting in a car. So I've put a lot of miles on my car, traveling all over the Bay Area, exploring and talking about everything under the sun. I like using the libraries because it's a resource that it's really important for the kids to recognize is there for them. It's an opportunity for us to do schoolwork together, to talk about things, and also for them to get access to the internet because that isn't always possible in a lot of the group homes and foster homes. Or if there is internet access, it's often very restricted and they can't go to Facebook or places like that that are important for a kid's development. Lots of special events. The Child Advocates Organization gets free tickets up to all sorts of different things, sporting events, theater events, stuff that we wouldn't normally have a chance to go to, and I definitely have taken advantage of that to bring kids to all sorts of things. Eating out, for some kids, they don't really have much opportunity to eat in restaurants, so that can be exciting. And it's a good learning experience too with the older kids. For example, I like to have them calculate the tip every time when we go to a restaurant. I want to help them understand that they need to leave a tip, and it's a good little math exercise. So I try to use a meal not just as a fun time to talk about stuff, but also to do a little bit of learning. I love having kids take me to their schools. It's a chance to see what their school is, let them tell me about their teachers and what they're learning and how things are going, and it gives me a visual picture for the school that they're at. And then a variety of other things that may be appropriate depending on the child's age. Specifically things like banks and apartment shopping. As a child gets older, and 3 of the 4 of my kids were 16, 17, 18 when I knew them, they needed to be thinking about those things. So we would go to banks and talk about opening savings deposits or savings accounts and checking accounts. We'd check out apartments for rent to see what it really costs to rent a place, and other sort of life skill events. Some of the placements that the kids have been in, I've got listed here. I'm not going to go through them, but mostly I just wanted to point out that there are lots of different places that kids can live, not just in a foster home, but in group homes with family placements, and a variety of other kinds of organizations. And it's very important to recognize that even when a child is returned to the family, the child advocate is still a really important part of that kid's life, because it's a difficult transition. The expectations are really high because usually parents and kid are really looking forward to it. The expectations are huge, and the challenges are huge too, because being a kid and being a teen is a difficult thing. So staying with them through that transition is also very important. I've gotten some really great connections by being with the kids who I've been with. The basketball example that I have, one of the times that I was most moved by the kids that I was spending time with was with Isaac. He was very, very quiet. It was really difficult to get him to talk about much of anything. And he had built quite a wall up around himself to protect himself from the world. He had a lot of experience with adults coming in saying, "I'm with you, I'm going to be with you," and then they disappear. And then the next one would come and do the same thing, and then they disappear. And his parents weren't able to support him. So he just kind of separated himself from the world. So after a few years of knowing him, we were on the basketball court together, and I'm not a basketball player. He loved playing. I'm not a basketball player, but I was 2 foot taller than him, so I could get away with it. Anyway, we were playing, and he stopped, and he looked at me, and he said, "You're not doing that right." And he stopped to show me how to shoot a basket better. He showed me the technique. He worked with me, and I thought, wow. He has so much confidence in himself as a teacher and in me as an adult he can trust, that he was able to open up in a really personal and frightening way, to turn to an adult and say, "You're not doing that right." So for me, that was just a really powerful message of the kind of relationship that we were able to build up. And that's what you as an advocate can bring to a kid. We've had conversations on all sorts of things. You never know what's going to come up. And it's been challenging to me. I've definitely been caught off guard on a number of occasions. I've had to call my supervisor to say, okay, so we had this conversation about an uncomfortable topic. Maybe it was sexuality, maybe it was abortion, maybe it was some kind of personal sharing that the kid did, and I need to talk to my supervisor, who's always available to me, to say, okay, this is what happened, guide me through this. Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? Is there any follow-up? Whether it's conversations or any of a variety of other things, a supervisor is a super resource. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not all easy and fun. There's really huge challenges that come up. The kids that you're working with have developed a lot of behaviors that can be very challenging, and they are very well trained at pushing boundaries. Every kid is. Sometimes foster kids maybe a little more, because they've always got new boundaries and they have to figure them out. So they'll keep you hopping, but it's very satisfying. So some of the challenges I've faced, first of all, is because the kids are moving around a lot, and it can be anywhere in the county. I've had placements all over Santa Clara County and as far away as Redding and Modesto in rare occasions. So I've traveled quite a lot to visit my kids. I've dealt with mental illness both with my kids and with family members, and that can be extremely challenging. Unreliable family, and they're there because their family's unreliable. That means they're also potentially unreliable to you. They say they'll be there at 6 o'clock when you're going to bring the kid back from a visit, and they're not. And you have to figure that out. So those are challenges as well. So all of these are tough, but as I mentioned earlier, you get great support from your supervisor, and it does get easier. Things that really ramped me up when I first started, I've been able to manage and handle a lot more effectively as I've gotten more experience with it. So then I want to talk a little bit about what I get out of this. First of all, I get a lot of emotional depth in my life. I grew up in a fairly unemotional family. I have a technical career, so it's a fairly unemotional career. I am emotionally engaged with these kids and with this organization, and it has brought a breadth and depth to my life that I never would have imagined. I get this really deep connection with kids in a very personal way that brings me great satisfaction, and I learn things all the time. I've learned to have great respect for what foster kids are able to do as they deal with the challenges in their life. They have a lot of things that most of us don't need to deal with, and I've watched incredible resilience and incredible growth and incredible resourcefulness from these kids, little to big, and that really moves me and gives me great respect for them. It's given me, of course, opportunities to expand outside my comfort zone in some cases. And the level of commitment that you make by signing up to be with a kid as long as they're in the system, which you can see from my experience can be multiple years, it helps me live my values. My values are to be involved in something in the long term, not just onesie-twosie events here and there, and this really helps me meet that goal. And then I'm going to close with some suggestions that I've learned during my time as a child advocate. First is to set boundaries, both with the kids and the caregivers. I think most people know that setting boundaries with kids is important, but it's also really important to remember that you need to do that with caregivers too. That you're there for a specific purpose. You're not there to help them move. You're not there to take the kid to every doctor's appointment or things like that. You can help with any of that, but you need to set boundaries and let the caregivers know what your role is and where you can help and where you can't help. You need to learn to identify when a situation is a real crisis, or if it's just another one of those, oh boy, I have to deal with this one. That was really difficult for me. I tended to, as I said earlier, to ramp up quickly and turn everything into a crisis. Some things are crises, and you have to do that. But most things are just, okay, we'll figure this out and let's move forward. Consistency in communication. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is. For so many of the kids, they don't have that anywhere else. With my last kid, Caleb, he said to me on several occasions, "You're the only person who's always there when you say you're going to be there. And I know I can trust you because you tell me if you're not going to be there, and if you say you are, you're going to be." And he doesn't have that with many other people. So that consistency is really important. Teach and model life skills all the time. An example I have for that is when I'm driving with an older kid, I'll talk about the decisions I make. That's a life skill, is learning how to drive. So I'll talk about both the good decisions and the bad decisions. Oh, like I ran through that yellow light and I probably shouldn't have. So I try to be really straightforward and honest about things like that, as well as how I choose to spend money, how I choose to not spend money, and a lot of other life skills that you just go through and help model to the kids how you go about doing that. Always remember that your supervisor is there. You can call on your supervisor, or you can call the advocate's office and talk to any supervisor for things that are outside of your area of comfort. There are discussion groups that are organized regularly throughout the year, and they're great places to work out challenges, to go talk to other peers, find out how they're handling certain situations. And finally, always write your court report. They are very important for the judge to be able to get a good picture of the child that you know very well. You're sharing your knowledge of this child with the judge. The judges, in my experience, always read them, always pay attention to them. They'll ask for clarification, they'll ask for follow-up, and it is a really important part of your overall role as an advocate. So I have absolutely loved my time with child advocates. I encourage anybody who's vaguely interested to sign up, find out more, and work with these amazing kids, and it'll be a really amazing experience for you as well.